Welcome to the Grow People podcast.
Welcome.
That is Pastor Jason, lead pastor of Revolution Church. My name is David Stein.
That is David Stein, campus
Right here.
pastor.
Right here, campus pastor at our Canton location. The purpose of the Grow People podcast is to help grow people.
We did that in unison.
We did.
That was good.
Well, after, 70 episodes, we should. Brian, do you know what episode we're on? Nope.
We are on 31.
We are?
I don't know. I just made it up.
No, we've been doing it for 2 years. Have we been doing it for 2 years?
What is this? 23?
I have no idea.
20. I don't know.
We were just sitting in the office talking about the fact that it's been 3 years.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Since 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Flatten the curve. 2 weeks to slow the spread.
Yep.
Hold on, I can tell you. I'm looking it up. It is episode 38.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. What did I say? Did I say
37?
You said
31.
You said 31. Yeah.
I didn't say a word. I have no idea where we are today.
Yeah,
let
episode
alone.
38. Yeah, you do have a habit of losing things.
I do.
Misplacing things.
I do. That's why I have a tile on everything. I have a tile on my Remarkable. I have a tile on my wallet. I have a tile on my keys.
Yeah. Now
So-
you just need a tile on your brain.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. Sometimes it's gone,
Yeah.
with the exception of 70s baseball trivia
That is very true.
and Olympic 100-meter dash winners.
Oh, you got that one too?
Oh, that's yeah.
Why is that?
I don't know.
I mean, you were a baseball player, but you weren't a runner, were you?
Well, the Olympics that was a big deal when I was growing up.
Yeah.
because there were only 3 channels.
Yeah.
there wasn't anything else to watch.
When you were growing up during the Greek Parthenon era. Yeah.
The decathlon was my favorite. But yeah, from 1964 to 1984,
Yeah.
I can tell you any 100-meter dash winner.
Why that sport?
I don't know.
Interesting.
It's bizarre.
It is bizarre.
Pick a year.
Yeah.
Pick a year.
Well, they only happen every 4.
They only happen every 4.
So when 72, did it happen in it?
So 1972,
Okay.
Munich. Valery Bortsov from Russia.
What's amazing about that is not only that you remembered that, but you can say a Russian name much clearer than you can say a lot of English names.
and the great male gymnast from that year was Nikolai Andrianov.
See,
And Olga Korbut, of course,
yeah.
was the female gymnast.
I have no idea.
Okay.
You could just be making up words and I'm like, sure.
All right. Well, the first time I went to another church in California after I got saved, and it was John MacArthur's church,
Mm-hmm.
I leaned over to the guy next to me. I said, he's making up these words, right? Because I had just gotten saved. So I didn't know what sanctification, justification, and
Yeah.
any post-modernity. And
Yeah.
I didn't know any of that. It's like, he's making these words up. All right. Purpose of the Grow People podcast is to grow people. Here we are post-Easter.
Mm-hmm.
It is the 3rd anniversary of COVID.
Yes, that is true.
And I just heard that the national emergency has been
It just
declared
ended
over.
this week.
Okay.
Yeah, even though it ended in Georgia back in 2020.
Yeah.
One of my professors at college, when I started my doctorate, there's 2 of us from Georgia in my class, and he was like, "Welcome to the guys, from Georgia who are not participating in this pandemic." So,
I mean that's
we
that's
did for a while.
a few weeks.
Yeah,
I
a few
think
months.
I think we were in restaurants by May.
I don't know if it was by May, but definitely, I mean, that summer, I remember that summer when we took a vacation, we went to Florida, as most Georgia people do. And yeah, we weren't wearing masks and, that kind of thing. So yeah, it was definitely, so from March to, some friends of mine in churches went back in May of that year. We didn't go back until, we tried to go back in July, but then we had a COVID outbreak on our staff. So that got delayed a little bit. So yeah, definitely by that fall, we were in schools and, that.
I remember the end of 2021, beginning of 2022, when my brother would call me from California. We're outside at a restaurant. I said, "Can you go in yet?" No, but we're outside at one.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy times.
It is crazy. It's crazy to think that, 3 years ago, if in some ways it feels like 30 years ago, because it was like so drawn out. But then some ways it feels like it was not that long ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was weird. It's hard to judge time by it.
It's hard to judge time at all.
Yeah.
Did I hear this correctly in one of our meetings? Next year's the 20th anniversary of the church.
Next year, August 2024 will be our 20-year anniversary.
Wow.
Yeah, church was planted in August of 2004. So
That's crazy.
that's nuts. 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this building just had its 10-year anniversary.
Yeah, we moved into this building in January of 2013.
Yeah, because somebody asked me if we were having a big bash for the 10th anniversary of the building. And I said, no, we're planning something bigger.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't say we celebrate a building. We celebrate the body.
Yes.
It's different. But yeah, even that is crazy. We've been in our Canton location for 10 years, which is nuts. Because again, I still call it the new building.
Yeah. Well, it's kept extremely well. And that's good stewardship on the part of, Hernan, who is our director of facilities.
We try.
And, when other churches are building a building, they'll come here and they'll look to see, what works, what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And they're shocked when we tell them it's 9-10 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when we built this, it was funny because the craziest part of the story of that whole story was I got here in January of 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And then in October of that same year, so 10 months later, we were doing a giving initiative. I mean, I hadn't even been here for a year and we were already trying to raise money to build a building.
Which they would say for a new pastor coming into an existing church, that's probably not a great
You don't ever do that.
Yeah.
No, normally they say you need to be there at least 2 or 3 years to build trust with people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I used to tell people, I feel like God gave me 2 years worth of credibility in the first 6 months, because it was just a crazy situation and time. And when we were raising money for that, one of the things I told our church was, listen, we're not trying to we're just building a box. Like we're not trying to build this, like the church building isn't our home.
That's right.
Isn't the church, I should say. We were trying to be very strategic in let's just build a box and with some rooms inside of it. And it's served us well. I mean, there's definitely some things about it I'd change now. I mean, we're out of space again, which is a great problem to have. Trying to meet, we're moving stuff around all the time. And so it's definitely a versatile space for us and has been great. But yeah, it's crazy to think we've been here 10 years in this space.
Yeah. Out of space on Easter.
Mm-hmm.
And we're recording this on Wednesday morning after Easter. You have recovered.
Well, we'll see how this goes. Yeah. Yeah, it was funny because, we had Thursday night, we had Saturday night, and then 3 Sunday mornings. So I preached twice as much as I normally would. Normally on a weekend it's 3 times, which that is my, I've worked with our board over the years. That is I won't preach more than 3 times on a weekend, on a normal weekend.
A good rhythm.
Yeah, because I just can't. Which is one of the reasons why the weekend before Easter, we showed video at both locations, record live to give me a break, my voice and my energy. But Saturday night, I was super tired because I don't normally preach on Saturday nights. And then Sunday, I was tired. But Monday, like you and several other people text me on Monday, midday, like, hey, how are you doing? So I felt pretty good on Monday. Actually worked outside because it was pretty. But then Tuesday morning, it hit me.
Yeah.
And so I felt like twice as tired I wasn't as tired on Monday, but then I was twice as tired on Tuesday. I don't know why that is. Maybe some doctor that goes to our church can tell me what that has to do with my hormones and energy levels or whatever. But now that it's Wednesday, I feel finally more rested.
I get that. Now, when I left probably around 1:30 on Sunday afternoon, and I was driving home, and Leanna said, "Are you tired?" I said, "No, I could go another service. I could." And got home. We went to a friend's house, had dinner there early.
Yeah.
came home, turned on the Masters, and as soon as I heard Jim Nance's first words,
then you were done.
I was done. And then, but I think you're right. Monday felt pretty good. Yesterday, we should have given the staff 2 days off.
Yeah, and a couple of our staff, production teams and stuff, did take 2 days off because they had to work last week more, changing stages. And
they were up till 3 o'clock in the morning.
Multiple late nights. So grateful for every one of them. But yeah, it was like, who knows? Again, I don't know the psychology or physiologically what that means. But yeah, that's what I tell people now. I can still do like preaching 6 times. I can still do that. It just takes longer to recover than it used to. And so I think that was the difference this year was it just took longer to recover from that long weekend.
But it was an incredible Easter.
Yeah, incredible.
And, so many incredible stories. Normally on this podcast, we're talking about theology. We're talking about the messages. And I read this and I thought it was so good. And we actually took a page out of this at our all staff meeting yesterday. Not intentional, other than it's always good to stop and listen to what God is doing. And Pastor Chad asked the staff yesterday, what's God doing in your life? And then last night I read this from J.I. Packer, or as Leanna would say on the radio, let's J.I. unpack this.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. She's so witty.
When Christians meet, they talk to each other about their Christian work and Christian interests, their Christian acquaintances, the state of the churches, and the problems of theology. But rarely do they talk of their daily experience of God. J.I. Packer is a modern-day theologian. I think
he was. He's passed away now.
I think he passed away, yeah. Modern Christian books and magazines contain much about Christian doctrine, Christian standards, problems of Christian conduct, techniques of Christian service, but little about the inner realities of fellowship with God. Our sermons contain much sound doctrine, but little relation to the converse between the soul and the Savior. He wrote this 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And if you're on Twitter, if you're on social media, if you listen to podcasts, even this podcast, you're going to get some great stuff.
Yeah. Hopefully.
But I think it's so important to talk about what God's doing in our lives. So yesterday we had a chance to say, hey, this is what God was saying to us individually. So here we are. Have you completed a full year of your doctorate program?
Yeah, this is my 3rd semester.
Okay.
And so my final project's due at the end of this month, and then I'll be a year and a half done.
13th year as lead pastor of Revolution Church, going into the 20th year of the church, coming out of what was a tremendous Easter. I mean, after 3 years of COVID, not knowing, what is the church ever going to look like?
Yeah.
And there were over 6,000 people in our locations.
Yeah, it wasn't in our largest attendance ever, I think.
Yeah.
Because it was like the way we count now, 2 campuses and online, it was like 6,700, something like that.
Yeah, which is remarkable.
Yeah, it was actually 700 more, almost 700 more than last year at Easter. But the most amazing thing about that is that was all in person. Like online was actually less this year than last year, but in person was more, and almost 700 more.
Yeah,
between the 2 campuses.
Yeah. So number one, thank you. If you normally went on Sunday, if you normally gather as the church on Sunday at 9:30 and 11:15, and at both campuses we were asking for a month.
Yes,
hey,
come to another gathering.
Come to another gathering. You did that.
Yes.
So we had lots of folks spread out over the course of the 6 gatherings here in Canton and the 3 gatherings in Jasper. It rained on Saturday. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah,
we're still full.
Yeah.
It was spring break.
Yeah.
And still packed. So that was so encouraging.
And the Masters. I know there was a couple people in our church that were at the Masters that watched online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder how they did that, because they don't allow phones at the Masters. So they told you they were watching online at the Masters?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people were saved. There were 31 here in Canton.
There was at least 10 in Jasper.
13 in Jasper.
Yeah.
19 kids here. 13 kids in Jasper.
Yeah.
One person online. We had people saved in our overflow areas at the Canton campus. And they're all stories.
Yeah.
There's 6,700 stories.
Yeah.
I mean, we are shepherds. We count sheep.
Yeah.
It's important for us to know so we can prepare for our gatherings. But they're all different stories. But I want to start out with your story. What's God doing in your life right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I love that quote that you shared from, I love Jay Packer. It's like, he's just one of those guys that.
Jim Packer.
Yeah.
Jim.
Yeah.
I'm Jim.
J.I. I'm always like, maybe one day I can get to like initial status, maybe one day I can be R.J. Curtis, For those that don't know, my first name is Richard. Anything J.I. says, I'm like, yes, I agree with. But what's profound about that statement is, here's a guy who is a theologian. He talks about God. But the best way to think about that is in a relational sense, and again, this is the way I think about it, which I'll get to your answering your question, is so often when it comes to God, we can think about him in such unrelational ways, like even how we pray or praying and reading our Bible. We can see it as things to do instead of a person to know. And the best way to think about that, especially if you're married, it's very easy. I can know a lot about my wife, or I can know a lot about you. I can know a lot of information about you. And I can talk about my wife or my kids. I can know, just like this, a lot about baseball. A lot about apparently 100-meter dashes in Olympic history for 2 decades.
1976, Hazley Crawford from Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah. Leanna is shaking her head currently right now.
Definitely. She has to live with it.
Yes, exactly. You can know a lot about someone, but not know them. And I think that is one of the most dangerous things about being a Christian and also being a Christian leader, pastor, minister, someone who serves in the church, whatever, because we live in this culture, and that's kind of what Jay is saying. We live in this Christian subculture, so we can talk about anything Christian, our version of Christian politics or Christian reality or Christian relationships. Whatever, Christian music. And again, all that is good and right. Nothing's wrong with it. But the danger is we can just like hover around God all the time, but never know God, never talk about God, or never talked to God. And honestly, that is probably, to answer your question, one of the things I think that God is doing in my own life. It's quite intriguing to me that you asked this or even thought about it. I think God is showing me that is the biggest danger of my life, of my own personal life, is, for example, I study the Bible every week because I'm paid to, But just this morning, before we worked out, because we normally work out together at the same place, I woke up this morning early. I had my alarm set for 6:30. It went off at 6, which I was upset about. And so I went ahead and got up, made coffee, sat in my chair, and opened my Bible and read. But that doesn't happen every day. But I'm so tempted, just like anybody else, to open up my phone and read other things. And there is a spiritual warfare component. Like, I could feel it in me, like, don't do this, my flesh, But I thought, no, I want to read my Bible because I love God. Like, I want to meet with God right now. I want to talk to God right now. And I want God to talk to me. I want to hear from somebody I love. I want to sit down and spend time with him.
I want to hear from somebody I love. That's That's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't let that gloss over while you're listening to this in the car.
Yeah.
When you talk to God, you're hearing from somebody you love.
Yeah. And someone who loves you. And so I read, which is interesting. I've been thinking about preaching through 1 Corinthians for a while. And who knows, whenever we're done with John, we'll do a different summer series. We're actually doing a series this summer on parables. But maybe in the fall, because I feel like Corinthians is a kind of a timely book because it was written to a group of people, the Corinthian church in a very, very, very pagan society. Mm-hmm. Corinth makes Vegas look like child's play. So I've been, even in Easter, I had some in 1 Corinthians 15. So I was just reading 1 Corinthians 1 this morning and reading through that, and Paul, talking to them. And again, thinking about my sermon for this week, in John 20. And Paul said some things in there about the role of the Spirit. And so anyway, just again, thinking, I think the thing that God is working in my life is just reminding me. In fact, I told this to one of our church planters 2 weeks ago. We had lunch, and I made a comment to him. In fact, I met with two of our church planters back to back. And so I made the comment to both of them. One who's planting a church in Texas, and then one who, actually Chris, who spoke here for Abide. Both of them will come and speak this summer, which I'm super excited for our church to hear from them. But I made a comment to them about how in leadership, the temptation in leadership, as you grow in your leadership, and our church has grown, and, I'm quote unquote more successful as a pastor. But one of the things that God's really been working in my life is the role of sin, which sounds funny. Like, the role of sin is what humbles us. Mm-hmm. And so sin, although it is an affront to God, obviously, and I'm not condoning sin in any way, but sin is also the very thing that humbles us, that forces us to remain dependent upon God. And so I told both of them, and this, again, what happens normally in my life, I'll say something like just this, those things I didn't think of those. If you asked me to think of those things, I couldn't. But if I just say something, then I'll think. But I said a line to them. I said, man, guys, listen, never forget that as you lead your churches, you're nothing more than a sinner. Mm. You're nothing more than a sinner. But then I said, at the same time, don't ever forget you're nothing less than a child of God.
Amen.
So where I'm going with that is, in my own life, I feel like God has been reminding me, Jason, listen, don't ever think more of yourself than you should, because you're nothing more than a sinner. Mm. You're on your best day without me, you're nothing more than a sinner. So therefore, how in the world could I be arrogant? Mm-hmm. But then the gospel says, on the flip side, on my worst day, I'm nothing less than a child of God.
Amen.
And so I think it's the juxtaposition of those two truths, which the gospel is, and we say this all, is it I'm a sinner or I'm a child of God? The answer is, we all know, everybody's screaming in your cars, wherever you listen to, yes. Mm-hmm. So it's both of those. And I think for us as Christians, we can focus on one or the other of those, I'm just a sinner, and we can just beat ourselves up. But then on the flip side, we can think, oh, I'm a child of God, and then that makes us arrogant, So in my own life, I think God has been, so my answer to your question, God has just been working in my own life those two truths to remind me that I have to stay dependent upon Him. Like, no matter how good of a sermon I preach, or, trying to lead our church, or whatever it is that God has gifted me and called me to do, I can't do any of it without Him. And He doesn't want me to do any of it without Him. And so therefore, you have to stay in that kind of, one of my friends used to call it a humble confidence, where sin humbles you to the point where you realize, what, He loves me? What?
Yeah.
This God gave me this book to tell me. He gave me his spirit to save me as a down deposit, as a down payment. Put those two words together.
I've heard
it both ways. Yeah. So I just think that reality he's been working in my life, and on my preaching break this summer, which we'll talk more about that coming up. I'm gonna do some, and I haven't done this in a while for the last couple years, just because I haven't had enough time. But I'm gonna take a little bit more time this summer, and I'm gonna go get some intentional coaching, personally, and then professionally, just to work on almost really kind of getting prepared for the next 20 years of ministry of our church. I just feel like I need to grow. I need to expand my capacity for God. Again, not my capacity to lead or communicate, that kind of stuff, but just my heart and my capacity for God
That's
to
so good.
Prepare in me the work that he wants me to do for the next 20 years.
And as a steward of this church, not as a pastor in this church, as a steward of this church, I am grateful for that. And if you're listening right now, that's the pursuit of humility that you want in your lead pastor.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's funny. And one of my mentors that I just talked to a couple weeks ago, who just had the transition. He's in his 70s and he just transitioned out of the lead pastor role. And he said, people want, like, when you're a servant leader, people applaud you for that. And especially in today's culture, to that point, yeah, we all want leaders that are humble. But he was going through something, and like, he's always tried to be a servant leader, but then there was something that happened where he actually felt like he was treated like a servant, which is not fun. And he made the statement of, yeah, people love it when you are acting like a servant leader. He's like, and even personally, when you act like a servant leader, you actually get more praise. Like, oh, good job, you're so humble. But when someone actually treats you like a servant, something in you is like, oh, no, don't treat me like that. Don't, you should treat me better. And where I'm going with that is, that's kind of what I mean, is we can never think that we're anything more than a sinner. I'm nothing more than a servant. And so therefore we have to develop, or allow the Spirit to develop our heart to where, and I've said this many times, but if no one else but Jesus knows my name, which kind of is a callback now to the Easter message.
Yeah, that was the turning point in the message for most people.
Yeah. Yeah. If Jesus knows my name, I'm okay.
Right.
So therefore, but I think honestly, most of us would say, no, that's not enough.
Our flesh wants more.
Yes.
Our flesh wants more.
Yes.
And that's why it was such a significant turning point in the message when I was sitting there Thursday night, taking notes, getting ready for the group leader guide to go out. And if you're in a group, that's how it plays out. Thursday night, I'm watching the message, I'm taking some notes, I'm writing some questions for the group leader guide. I send it out to the group leaders sometime over the weekend. And then you get to experience reaping the verses in the message and asking application questions in your community group. And invariably, there's a moment every Thursday night where I just shut my laptop and take it in.
Yeah.
And I began to weep at the moment where you said, Jesus said Mary's name.
Yeah.
What was significant about that for me, and I know for so many people that I talk to, we have wanted to be known all our lives by the wrong people.
Yeah.
And, growing up, wanting to be known, and if I was not known enough, it wasn't enough in our house.
Yeah.
And that wasn't, my parents not loving me.
No.
They just were, nothing was ever enough.
Yeah.
And Jesus is enough.
Yeah.
And him knowing my name. So knowing that he called my name 16 years ago.
Yeah.
And that he called all of those names in the room and watching online. That was a significant moment to say, all right, I don't I don't need anybody's approval anymore.
Yeah. And the wild thing, and you and I talked about this, literally Thursday afternoon, I was trying to finish up the message, and I kept wrestling with, do I have too many verses? Do I need to take some out? And so I came, in fact, at one point in time in the message prep, I had cut out that whole section, and I was going to end on verse 10 or 9 and 10, where he must rise again. And then they went back to their homes. But then I just couldn't leave that part out, because that is so powerful. And to know now why, and you're exactly right. And that's really kind of the point that, again, that I was making earlier, which led me to say, Jesus knowing my name. You look at Jesus in his ministry, at the beginning of his ministry, when he was baptized, and the Spirit descends and the Father speaks, "This is my Son with whom I'm well pleased." Well, how in the world could Jesus from that point on, Jesus experiences 3 years of simultaneously ministry success and utter failure, because he succeeded in getting the message out, but then it led to his death. So how in the world could, two extremes, the success of Jesus' ministry, it didn't make him big-headed, but the impending failure and doom of his life didn't lead him to despair. So something kept Jesus from those two extremes.
Right.
Something kept him from thinking he was, this Messiah. How did Jesus the Messiah not develop a Messiah complex? That in and of itself is a psychological marvel. How did he not do that?
Right.
Even though he knew he was,
right.
But he didn't walk around like that.
No.
And so he was humble, but then he wasn't despondent. He wasn't, it kept him out because he knew he had the approval of his Father. His Father knew his name. And so I think, again, coming back full circle now to that J.I. Packer quote and everything we've been talking about, the only antidote to, hubris, arrogance, or despondency is the fact that God knows my name. And yeah, you mentioned your house and all of us. The craziness of life without God is, you and your parents. So you got 3 sinners trying to figure out how to affirm one another. You know what I mean? 3 sinners asking the other, be God for me. Well, of course. So all of us grew, even people who grew up in great families, it was still dysfunctional. And so a good father and mother, or a godly father and mother, are going to do a good job of explaining to their children the limits of what they can provide for them. The limits of, I can affirm you, but I've got to show you who is your real father, who can affirm you. And so Lindsay and I have tried to do that with our kids. We try to be really faithful, stable parents to our children, but at the same time showing them our failure so that they look to Jesus. So that our kids don't try to look to us to give them something that we never can.
Right.
So that's kind of my point, is that's the reality of Easter, is not just that Jesus rose from the dead, but Jesus says my name and your name and calls us out to be with him.
Yeah. When you said that, our greatest emotional need is to be known.
Yeah.
And you think about it. Yeah. If you frequent a coffee shop or a place to get a healthy shake, and you walk in and somebody behind the counter says, "Hey, David, chocolate peanut butter banana," makes you feel good.
Yes,
everybody in the room knows they know me.
Yes,
so there is this need, this emotional need. But when you take out the fleshly desire for man to know you, and you place it on our Heavenly Father, and know that you know that you know that He knows. That changes everything.
Yeah, and you don't even have to, and I know you didn't mean it this way, but I thought about this as you were saying that, the fleshly desire. You don't even have to frame that, someone, you going in and getting, a protein shake or whatever, and somebody knowing your name, that in and of itself is not bad that you want that. Like, that's not sin.
No, I was just comparing
No,
the two.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I know you weren't trying to say it was sin, but when you talk about fleshly, like, it's not bad to want to be known. And it's not wrong to recognize, man, that feels good when they know me. Because we're also made for relationships,
Right.
is where I'm trying to get. The problem comes in, the sin comes in when we think that ultimate satisfaction is just being known by other humans. And the point that I was going to, that I thought of, is like, if it feels good, and it does. I mean, again, they know now when someone says your name, endorphins are released in your brain and it makes you happy. Well, if endorphins are released in your brain when a barista or somebody knows your name, imagine how much more joyful it is when God knows your name. Because it'd be different if I'm known by a local pastry chef or, somebody like that.
Glazed today?
Yeah. But if the president walks in and knows my name, what does that do to my status? Sure. Oh my gosh, that person knows your name?
Right.
Which, and again, I'm not making a political statement, but I'm just talking about the office.
Sure.
If a king of a country if the Queen Elizabeth, before she died, walked in and she knew my name, people are like, what? She knows you?
Right. Right.
So if that's true on a human perspective, then how much more so the King of Kings knows my name?
Yeah.
The highest authority on heaven and earth, as Jesus said in Matthew 28, knows my name. So if Jesus, the King of Kings, the Creator, God, Lord, Messiah, knows my name, then it gives me the psychological basis to be like, it's okay if that person doesn't know my name. Again, I don't have to. Why would I seek to be known by a group of friends in middle school or by followers on social media if God knows my name? Again, it's not wrong to be known by those people and to enjoy being known. That's not wrong. I mean, I want people to know me. I want you to know me. I want people in our church to know me. I want to know them, our staff, my family. None of that's wrong. It's only wrong when I expect them to do something for me they can't. That's the point. And so, I mean, just imagine Mary for the rest of her life, from that point on, thinking, I'm okay. I've seen the Lord. He knows my name. Well, that just changes and so this whole relational component is what I'm trying to say, which again goes back to that quote and what we've been talking about is when I sit down to study my Bible, or if I sit down to pray and I can think about it, I can frame my mind around it from less of, I need to do this, to I'm sitting down and talking to somebody that knows me, that I know, that knows me, and wants to know me, and wants me to cast my anxieties on him. He wants to know what's going on with me. Well, that will change your whole prayer life. Because now it moves out of performance and it moves into, I'm just processing with you. I'm just processing my life with you right now. I'm just talking to you. I mean, you and I have been friends now for years. Well, I don't get nervous to walk into your office and sit down and talk to you about something because we're friends. Right. We know each other. I mean, we're brothers. Well, that's how God wants it to be with us. Just, hey, sit down and talk to me. I want to talk to you. I know you. I know your name. I want to affirm you. I want to help you.
And as much as there was a spiritual battle wrestling this morning, sitting in your chair. Once you start talking to him. Once you recognize, hey, he loves me. I love him. We're just having a conversation.
We're just talking. And I think that's one of the reasons why I take breaks in the summer. And it's funny, one of the things that I try to do when I take a break is I try to talk a lot less, like intentionally try to talk less. because I talk all the time.
We're still going to have a podcast this summer.
Yeah.
Just be less Jason.
Yeah, less me talking. And just listen.
Mm-hmm.
Again, because I don't ever want to think that God loves me more because I talk for him.
Mm.
Nor do I ever want to talk for God without knowing him.
Right.
I mean, that's very dangerous. I mean, again, we've seen the laundry list of pastors and leaders are long that have done that. And the most detrimental thing for my soul or anybody else's soul is to talk for somebody and not know them.
Right.
I mean, think about it. I mean, we have ambassadors in this country. If we have an ambassador, the ambassador to Israel or the ambassador to the UN,
Mm-hmm.
who's going to sit up there and represent the United States or represent the president. But they just keep talking on and on and on about something. And the president's like, I never said that.
He doesn't know me.
She doesn't know me. He
Right.
doesn't know me. That is not what I meant. That is not what I said.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to spend, I think honestly, and this is, I'm just making this up. So this isn't like a rule of thumb. But if I'm applying the principle of James, what says, listen twice as much as you speak.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I'm going to speak for God, then I better listen to him twice as much.
Right. That's good.
Than what I speak for him.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, just people in our church, if you're going to give counsel or wisdom to somebody, make sure you've listened to God twice as long before you speak.
Mm.
So it's not just listen to people twice as much.
Wow.
It's listen to God and a personal relationship with him before you open your mouth on his behalf.
That's excellent. Excellent. And a great answer to the question, what's God doing in your life? So thank you for sharing that. So many stories coming out of Easter. And of course, you got to see Caleb's story.
Yeah, amazing.
If you didn't see Caleb's story, we're going to post all of his story online at some point. But come back this weekend.
Part 2.
For part 2 of Caleb's story. And if you have a story that you would like to share with us,
please.
Right on the app, there is a square on the front page of the app. If you don't have the app,
You have it pulled up, right?
download the Revolution app, and you just click on or tap share your story, and you can share your story with us.
Yeah.
And everybody has a story.
Yeah, we'd love to hear that. In fact, somebody right before Easter just messaged us on Facebook her story, and we read it in all stuff. It was powerful. Yeah, we'd love to hear them.
So I got a chance to talk to a lot of people in the lobby after Easter gatherings and heard many stories. Talked to a 40-year-old woman who grew up Catholic, had been going to a Catholic church, came out in the lobby crying.
Wow.
She was a guest of somebody that just started coming here.
Oh, wow.
And she had never heard the gospel presented in a way that she understood. And she trusted in Jesus.
Wow.
And so when you see somebody in the church walking around with one of those
new Bibles,
it's kind of maroon. It's a
which is really a problem. We should get some burnt orange ones. I'm just saying we should.
He's wearing his UT outfit
I'm wearing my
today.
UT.
If you see somebody walking around with one of those new Bibles that we hand out, encourage them.
Yeah, they just trusted Jesus.
Yeah. So powerful stuff. Go to the app, get the app, and click on share your story. I think that's it for today. I think we have used up all of our. We haven't used up all of our time. We can still talk some more. But if you want a transcript of what we said today, just write everything down. Our producer is Brian Damerow. If you're wondering, you saw Chandler walking around with a camera this weekend, but Chandler has gone on to greater things.
Yeah.
But he is still serving here, and that's really cool.
He's still a part of our church.
Yeah.
He just took another job.
Yep.
in the area, and but yeah, still him and his wife still a part of our church and serving.
So Brian Damerow, who's our production minister, is producing the show right now. Our head of
media minister, I think, is something.
Media
like
minister.
That.
Okay.
Can you speak on this, Brian? What is your title? Or you can't.
He left.
Okay.
he only produces the first 44 minutes. The last part.
There he is.
Oh,
there.
all right. What is your title?
Oh, there you go.
Production and
I
creative
don't know.
minister.
We just make up titles.
He just Pastor Jason wanted to be media minister, so it
He
has
is, you know, like
alliteration.
there's Sir Mix-a-Lot, the old rapper. You know,
Yeah.
Brian is Sir Does-a-Lot.
Sir-
Yeah.
and if you don't know this, Brian was in Pastor Jason's youth group in Texas.
We didn't call it youth group,
What'd
but
you call
yes,
it?
student ministry.
Student ministry.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't. I don't know. I don't know the lingo
You didn't grow
yet.
up, yeah, yeah. You didn't. You grew up Jewish, not
Yeah.
Protestant.
Yeah, I don't even know if we had student ministry in
Probably
synagogues. I don't know.
Probably not.
Our head of doctrine and theology is a wonderful young lady named theologian. Our chief evangelist is salvation. Our backsliding prevention officer is lukewarm, and he's got a job for life. Our translator works really hard on everything, is lexicon, which never gets a laugh, but I think it's funny. Our lineage specialist is genealogy. Our director of Swedish witnessing is Bjorn again.
Bjorn.
Yeah. Our Reformed theology advisor is Calvinism. Our expert on Russian eschatology is Pitov Hell.
You're really good at those Russian names.
No relation to Valery Bortsov, Nikolai Andrianov, or Olga Korbut. Our director of holiness is mortification. Our staff counselor is Les Moody.
Yeah, that might be my new favorite there.
Our giving coordinator is generosity. Our director of tithing is 10%. Our nativity coordinator, she's from France, Bethlehem.
Lachem.
Co-pastors of plagues, Manny Locusts, and Lance Boyles. and our new staff member, our Irish eschatology professor, Mark O' the Beast.
Mark O' the Beast. Because you know it's Irish if you just add in O to anything.
Just O. Mark O' the Beast. And our final, I don't know about this. Our final statement of every podcast is quite simply,
trust God and take a nap.
see you next
See ya.
time.